Why would a woman storm into a quaint watch shop, clutching a vintage timepiece, and demand a refund for a clock that runs slow when she hasn't wound it in years? Karen's heels clacked against the worn wooden floor of Ticking Treasures, a tiny shop nestled in the heart of a sleepy coastal town. Her purse swung like a pendulum, her face a storm cloud of indignation. The bell above the door jangled violently as she shoved it open, her voice cutting through the soft hum of 100 clocks. "This thing is broken. I paid good money for it, and it's useless," she snapped, slamming a delicate gold pocket watch onto the counter. The watch, a 1920s heirloom, gleamed faintly under the shop's warm lamplight, its hands frozen at 3:17. Elias, the shop's owner, a wiry man in his late 60s with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, didn't flinch. His fingers, calloused from decades of coaxing life into gears and springs, paused over a half-assembled wristwatch. He glanced up, his eyes sharp but kind, and said, "Let's take a look, ma'am." Karen's lips pursed. "Don't ma'am me. I want a refund. Now." The air grew thick, the ticking clocks a chorus to her rising temper. Elias picked up the pocket watch, turning it gently in his hands. Its engraved case told a story of love and loss, a gift passed down through generations. He popped open the back, revealing a mechanism caked with dust. "When was the last time you wound it?" he asked, his voice steady. Karen blinked, her confidence faltering for a split second before her scowl returned. "That's not the point. It's supposed to work." Elias's apprentice, Mia, a quiet girl in her early 20s, hovered nearby, her hands fidgeting with a velvet tray of tools. She wanted to speak, but held back, sensing the storm brewing. The shop, with its shelves of gleaming timepieces and the faint scent of polished wood, felt like a battlefield where truth and pride were about to collide. Karen's accusation hung in the air, but Elias's calm demeanor hinted at a deeper story, one that would unravel with every tick of the clock. He set the watch down and met her gaze. "Ma'am, a watch like this needs care. If you don't wind it, it stops. Simple as that." Karen's face reddened. "Are you calling me stupid?" She shot back, her voice loud enough to make Mia flinch. Elias didn't budge. He'd seen customers like her before, people who blamed the world for their own oversights. But there was something in Karen's eyes, a flicker of desperation beneath her anger, that made him pause. This wasn't just about a watch. Something deeper was at play, something personal. He leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "I'm saying this watch is fine. It just needs someone to give it time." Karen's hands clenched into fists, and for a moment, it seemed she might explode. But the shop's quiet rhythm, the steady tick-tock of countless clocks, seemed to hold her in place, forcing her to confront the weight of her own words. She wasn't ready to back down, not yet. The confrontation was only beginning, and the truth about why Karen was really here was still buried, waiting to surface like a spring uncoiling after years of neglect. Mia, watching from the sidelines, felt a knot in her stomach. She knew Elias was right, but she also sensed Karen's pain was more than a broken watch could explain. The shop's warm light cast long shadows, and the stage was set for a reckoning that would test them all. Karen's next words came sharp and fast. "I don't have time for this nonsense. Fix it or give me my money back." Elias sighed, his fingers brushing the watch's surface as if it could whisper its own defense. He knew this wasn't about mechanics. It was about trust, pride, and something Karen wasn't ready to admit. The truth was close, but it would take more than a quick fix to unearth it. For now, the pocket watch lay silent, its frozen hands a mirror to Karen's stalled life, waiting for someone to wind it back to life. Karen's voice echoed in the shop, sharp as a snapped spring, but Elias remained unshaken. His hands, steady as the clocks around him, moved to a drawer beneath the counter, pulling out a small, winding key. He held it up, its brass catching the light. "This watch," he said, his voice calm, but laced with authority, "is a manual wind. No battery, no shortcuts. You have to turn the key every day, or it stops. That's not a flaw. It's how it was made." Karen's eyes narrowed, her arms crossing tightly. "Don't lecture me. I know how watches work. This one's defective, and you're trying to dodge responsibility." Her words were a blade, but Elias's gaze didn't waver. He'd spent 40 years in this shop, fixing not just timepieces but the stories they carried: grief, love, regret. He could see it in Karen's face. The watch wasn't the problem. It was a symbol of something she'd lost, something she was fighting to reclaim. Mia, still clutching her tray, shifted uncomfortably. She wanted to intervene, to soften the tension, but Elias's subtle glance told her to stay put. He turned the watch over, tracing the faint inscription on its back: "To my dearest, forever yours." "This belonged to someone special, didn't it?" he asked softly. Karen froze, her bravado cracking like thin ice. For a moment, her eyes softened, but she quickly masked it with a scoff. "That's none of your business. Just fix it." Elias nodded, setting the watch down with care. "I'll check it, but I need to know its history. Watches like this carry more than time." Karen's jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. The shop's ticking filled the silence, a relentless reminder that time was moving forward, whether she liked it or not. Elias began winding the watch, the soft click of gears coming to life. Its hands twitched, then started to move, steady and sure. "See," he said, holding it up. "It's running fine now." Karen's face twisted, a mix of disbelief and frustration. "That's impossible. It's been slow for weeks." Her voice trembled, betraying more than anger. Elias leaned back, studying her. "When did you last wind it?" he pressed, his tone gentle but probing. Karen hesitated, her fingers fidgeting with her purse strap. "I don't know. A while ago." The admission was reluctant, like pulling a splinter from deep within. Elias nodded, unsurprised. "A watch like this stops when you stop caring for it. It's not broken, it's waiting." Karen's eyes flashed, but before she could retort, the shop door jingled, and a new figure stepped in, breaking the rhythm of the moment. It was Tom, a local antiques dealer, his weathered coat dusted with the salt of the coastal air. His presence was a twist, unexpected but heavy with implication. "Elias, you still got that old pocket watch I sold you last month?" he asked, oblivious to the tension. Karen's head snapped toward him, her expression shifting to something unreadable, part recognition, part dread. Elias raised an eyebrow, glancing between them. "This one?" he asked, holding up Karen's watch. Tom's face lit up, then faltered as he noticed Karen. "Are you the one who bought it?" he said, his voice trailing off. Karen's lips parted, but no words came. The air grew heavier, the ticking louder, as if the clocks themselves sensed a buried truth clawing its way out. Mia, watching from behind the counter, felt her pulse quicken. Tom's arrival wasn't random. It was a thread in the unraveling of Karen's story. "You two know each other?" Elias asked, his voice neutral but his eyes sharp. Tom scratched his neck, uneasy. "Well, I sold her the watch. Told her it was a rare piece, but I might have forgotten to mention it needs winding." Karen's face flushed, her anger now split between Elias and Tom. "You sold me a broken watch and didn't tell me how to use it?" she snapped, her voice rising. Tom raised his hands defensively. "I thought you knew. It's an antique, not a digital toy." The confrontation was no longer just about the watch. It was about trust betrayed, assumptions made, and a woman grappling with her own oversight. Elias watched, his silence a steady anchor in the storm. He knew the truth was close, but it would take more than accusations to bring it to light. Karen's pain, Tom's carelessness, and the watch's silent history were all converging, setting the stage for a clash that would reveal more than anyone expected. The shop's air crackled with tension, the ticking clocks amplifying every word like a heartbeat. Karen's eyes darted between Tom and Elias, her anger a live wire ready to spark. "So you both think you can scam me?" she spat, her voice trembling with a mix of fury and betrayal. "You sold me a useless watch, and you," she jabbed a finger at Elias, "you're covering for him." Elias remained calm, his hands resting on the counter, the pocket watch gleaming between them like a silent witness. "No one's scamming anyone," he said evenly. "This watch works. You just didn't know how to care for it." Karen's laugh was sharp, bitter. "Care for it? I paid for something that works, not a hobby." Her words were a shield, but her eyes betrayed her, a flicker of shame, a shadow of something deeper. Tom shifted uncomfortably, his earlier confidence fading. "Look, lady, I told you it was an antique. I didn't think you'd need a manual." His tone was defensive, but there was a hint of guilt, as if he knew he'd cut corners. Mia, still hovering behind the counter, felt the weight of the moment. She wanted to speak, to defuse the escalating fight, but the look in Elias's eyes told her to wait. He was reading Karen, piecing together the puzzle of her anger. The watch wasn't just a purchase. It was a tether to something she'd lost, something she was desperate to hold on to. "Why did you buy this watch, Karen?" Elias asked, his voice soft but piercing. The question caught her off guard, her name on his lips like a key turning in a lock. She froze, her hands tightening around her purse. "What does that matter?" she shot back, but her voice wavered. Elias leaned forward, his gaze steady. "It matters because this watch isn't just a machine. It's a story, and I think you know that." Karen's breath hitched, and for a moment, the shop seemed to hold its breath too. The ticking clocks, the faint creak of the floorboards, the dust motes dancing in the sunlight, all paused, as if waiting for her to speak. But before she could, Tom interjected, his voice clumsy with impatience. "Look, I'm sorry, okay? I should have explained it better. But it's not my fault you didn't wind it." His words were like gasoline on a fire. Karen's face twisted, and she turned on him, her voice rising to a near shout. "Not your fault? You sold me a memory, and it's broken. You don't get to walk away from that." The word memory hung in the air, heavy and raw. Mia's eyes widened. She caught it too. This was the twist, the crack in Karen's armor. The watch wasn't just an antique. It was a piece of her past, a link to someone or something she'd lost. Elias's expression softened, but he didn't push. Instead, he picked up the watch again, winding it slowly, its gears clicking back to life. "This watch belonged to someone you loved, didn't it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Karen's eyes glistened, but she blinked hard, refusing to let tears fall. "You don't know anything," she said, but her voice was breaking. The shop's warmth, the steady rhythm of the clocks, seemed to wrap around her, urging her to let go. Tom, sensing the shift, took a step back, his bravado gone. "I didn't mean to upset you," he mumbled, but Karen ignored him, her focus locked on Elias and the watch. "It was my father's," she finally said, her voice barely audible. "He gave it to me before he passed. It's all I have left." The admission was a wound laid bare, and the shop fell silent, save for the relentless ticking. Elias nodded, his eyes full of understanding. "And you thought it was broken because it stopped ticking. But it's not broken, Karen. It just needs you to keep it going." The words were simple, but they carried a weight that hit her hard. She stared at the watch, its hands now moving smoothly, as if mocking her earlier fury. The confrontation had reached its peak, but the truth was only half revealed. Karen's pain was real, but so was her refusal to accept her role in the watch's silence. The stage was set for a deeper reckoning, one that would force her to face not just the watch, but herself. Karen's admission hung in the air, fragile as the glass covering the pocket watch's face. The shop's ticking clocks seemed to pulse with her heartbeat, each second a reminder of the time she'd let slip away. Elias held the watch gently, its steady tick a quiet rebuke to her earlier accusations. "Your father's watch," he said softly, "is a fine piece. But it's not just a story anymore, it's yours." Karen's eyes flicked to the watch, then away, as if meeting its gaze would burn. "I don't need a lecture," she muttered, but her voice lacked its earlier fire. The truth was sinking in, heavy and unyielding. She'd blamed the watch, the shop, Tom, anyone but herself, for its silence. Mia, still clutching her tray, felt a pang of empathy. She'd seen customers come and go, their stories etched in the timepieces they brought, but Karen's pain was raw, almost tangible. Tom, meanwhile, shuffled awkwardly, his guilt plain. "I should have told you how to wind it," he said, his voice low. I didn't think it'd be this big a deal." Karen's head snapped toward him, her eyes blazing. "Not a big deal. This was my father's. He carried it every day, and now it's all I have. And you, she stopped, her voice catching. The shop's warm light cast her shadow long and jagged, mirroring the fracture in her composure. Elias set the watch down, its steady tick filling the silence. Karen, he said, his voice a lifeline, this watch isn't broken. It stopped because you stopped winding it. That's not failure. It's just life. You can start again. His words were gentle but firm, cutting through her defenses. Karen's hands trembled, her fingers brushing the counter as if anchoring herself. You don't understand, she whispered. I thought if it worked, it'd be like he was still here. The confession spilled out, raw and unguarded. Mia's breath caught. She hadn't expected this depth of grief. Elias nodded, his eyes full of quiet wisdom. A watch can't bring him back, he said, but it can remind you to keep going, just like he would have wanted. Karen's lips quivered, but she held herself together, barely. The confrontation was no longer about refunds or blame. It was about her loss, and the weight of carrying on. Tom, sensing he was out of place, mumbled an apology and slipped toward the door, but Karen barely noticed. Her focus was on the watch, its ticking now a steady rhythm, a heartbeat she'd forgotten how to hear. Elias picked it up, offering it to her. Try winding it, he said. Just a few turns. Karen hesitated, her hand hovering. The simple act felt monumental, a step toward accepting her father's absence. She took the watch, her fingers clumsy as she inserted the key. The gears clicked, and the hands moved faster, as if eager to make up for lost time. A single tear fell, smudging the counter. Mia, unable to stay silent, finally spoke. My grandpa had a watch like that, she said softly. I used to wind it for him. It made me feel like he was still with me, even after he was gone. Karen looked at her, surprised, as if seeing her for the first time. The shared loss bridged the gap between them, a quiet understanding. But Karen wasn't ready to let go of her anger completely. It shouldn't be this hard, she said, her voice breaking. Why does it have to be so hard? Elias's smile was sad but warm. Because the things that matter always are. The shop's clocks ticked on, indifferent to the raw emotion unfolding. Karen clutched the watch, its weight both a comfort and a burden. The truth was clear now. The watch wasn't broken, but her connection to it had frayed. The confrontation had peeled back her defenses, leaving her exposed. The stage was set for her to either crumble under the weight of her grief or find a way to carry it forward. The ticking clocks seemed to urge her toward the latter, but the choice was hers alone. Karen stood frozen, the pocket watch cradled in her hands, its steady tick of pulse against her trembling fingers. The shop's warm light bathed her in a soft glow, but her face was a storm of conflict, grief, shame, and a flicker of something new, something like resolve. Elias watched her silently, his eyes carrying the weight of someone who'd seen countless stories unfold in this very shop. Mia, still behind the counter, held her breath, sensing the fragile moment could shatter with a single wrong word. The clocks ticked on, relentless, as if time itself was pushing Karen toward a reckoning. She looked down at the watch, its engraved case glinting with the words "To my dearest, forever yours." Her father's voice echoed in her memory, his laugh, his gentle teasing, the way he'd wind the watch each morning with a ritualistic care. She'd stopped winding it after he died, as if letting it stop could freeze her grief, keep him close. But it hadn't. It had only left her with a silent relic and a gnawing sense of failure. I didn't know, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I thought if it stopped, it meant he was gone for good. Elias's expression softened, but he didn't interrupt. He knew this was her moment, her unraveling. Karen's shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of her. I yelled at you, she said, her eyes meeting his. I yelled at everyone, and it wasn't even about the watch. I miss him. The admission was a collapse, her pride crumbling like a house of cards. Mia's eyes stung with tears. She knew that kind of loss, the way it could twist you into someone you didn't recognize. Elias stepped around the counter, his movements slow and deliberate. You're not the first to come in here angry at a watch for what it represents, he said. And you won't be the last. But this watch? It's still ticking. And so are you. Karen's breath hitched, and she clutched the watch tighter, as if it could anchor her against the tide of her emotions. The shop's ticking filled the silence, a steady reminder that time didn't wait for grief to heal. She looked at Elias, then at Mia, her eyes searching for something, forgiveness, understanding, or maybe just a way forward. "How do I keep it going?" she asked, her voice small but earnest. Elias smiled, a rare warmth breaking through his stoic demeanor. "You win it every day. You give it a little of your time, your care. It's not just about the watch. It's about you choosing to keep going." He handed her the winding key, its brass cool against her palm. Karen stared at it, the weight of the gesture sinking in. It wasn't just about mechanics. It was about reclaiming a piece of herself she'd let slip away. Mia, emboldened by the moment, stepped forward. "I can show you how," she offered, her voice gentle. "It's not hard, once you get the rhythm." Karen nodded, her eyes glistening, but her jaw set with determination. She inserted the key, her hands steadier now, and turned it slowly. The gears clicked, the hands moved, and for the first time in years, she felt a spark of connection. Not just to the watch, but to her father, to herself. The shop's clocks seemed to hum in approval, their ticks aligning in a quiet symphony. Karen's collapse wasn't the end. It was a breaking open, a chance to rebuild. She looked at Elias, her voice steady despite the tears. "I'm sorry," she said. "I was wrong." Elias waved a hand, dismissing her apology with a kind smile. "No need. You came here looking for something. I think you found it." The shop's warmth wrapped around them, a cocoon of ticking time and shared humanity. Karen's journey wasn't over, but the weight of her anger had lifted, replaced by a fragile but growing resolve. The watch ticked on, a small but steady reminder that even broken things could be mended with care, and that time, if given a chance, could heal. Karen held the pocket watch close, its steady tick a quiet heartbeat against her palm. The shop's golden light softened the edges of her grief, and the relentless ticking of the clocks around her felt less like a judgment and more like a gentle nudge forward. Elias leaned against the counter, his hands folded, watching her with a quiet patience that spoke of years spent guiding people through moments like this. Mia, her earlier hesitation gone, stepped closer, her voice soft but eager. "Want me to show you how to clean it, too?" she asked. "It'll keep it running smoother." Karen looked at her, surprised by the offer, and nodded. "I'd like that," she said, her voice steady but carrying the weight of her newfound vulnerability. Mia smiled, setting her tray down and pulling out a small cloth and a bottle of cleaning solution. The simple act of care, polishing the watch's case, checking its gears, felt like a ritual, a passing of trust from one generation to another. Elias watched, his eyes crinkling with approval. "You're a quick learner," he told Karen, his tone light but meaningful. "Your father would have been proud of that." The mention of her father brought a fresh wave of emotion. But this time, Karen didn't flinch. She felt the sting, but it was softer now, less like a wound and more like a memory. "He used to wind it every morning," she said, her voice distant but warm. "He'd sit at the kitchen table, humming some old song, and tell me stories about his dad, who gave it to him. I thought if I didn't wind it, I could keep him frozen in time." Mia paused, her cloth hovering over the watch. "I get that," she said quietly. "I used to keep my grandpa's watch in a drawer because looking at it hurt too much. But then I realized it was like keeping him locked away." Karen met her eyes, a silent understanding passing between them. The shop's ticking clocks seemed to hum in harmony, their rhythm a backdrop to this moment of connection. Elias, sensing the shift, stepped back, giving them space. He'd seen this before, people finding solace in shared stories, in the small act of caring for something that carried a piece of the past. Karen turned the winding key again, the gears clicking smoothly. "It's not so hard," she said, a faint smile breaking through. "I just forgot how to do it." Mia grinned, her youthful energy a contrast to the shop's timeless calm. "You'll get the hang of it. It's like riding a bike. Once you start, it comes back." The moment was light, but it carried weight, a bridge between Karen's past and the possibility of a future where she could carry her father's memory without being crushed by it. The shop's door jingled again, and a new customer stepped in, breaking the intimacy of the moment. It was an older woman, her face lined with years, but her eyes bright with curiosity. She glanced at the scene, Karen holding the watch, Mia with her cloth, Elias watching like a quiet sentinel, and smiled. "Looks like you're fixing more than clocks today," she said, her voice warm with humor. Elias chuckled, a rare sound that filled the shop with life. "Always do," he replied. Karen looked at the watch, its hands moving steadily, and felt a spark of hope. She'd come in angry, ready to fight, but she was leaving with something else, a reminder that time didn't have to be an enemy. It could be a companion, a way to honor her father by keeping his watch and his memory alive. She slipped the watch into her purse, careful not to disturb its rhythm. "Thank you," she said, her voice quiet but sincere, addressing both Elias and Mia. Elias nodded, his eyes kind. "Come back if it needs winding," he said, "or if you just need a reminder." Karen smiled, a small but genuine curve of her lips. The shop's warmth, the ticking clocks, the shared stories, they'd given her more than a working watch. They'd given her a way forward, a way to keep time moving without losing herself in the past. Karen stepped out of ticking treasures, the pocket watch tucked safely in her purse, its steady tick a quiet promise against the hum of the coastal town. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows on the cobblestone street, and the air carried the faint salt of the ocean, Ming Gevragged. Karen stepped out of ticking treasures, the pocket watch tucked safely in her purse, its steady tick a quiet promise against the hum of the coastal town. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows on the cobblestone street, and the air carried the faint salt of the ocean, mingling with the warmth of a day winding down. She paused at the shop's threshold, her hand lingering on the doorframe, as if reluctant to leave the sanctuary of ticking clocks and shared truths behind. The weight of her earlier anger had dissolved, replaced by a fragile but growing sense of peace. The watch, once a symbol of her loss, now felt like a bridge to her father, a way to carry him with her, not as a burden, but as a quiet strength. She took a deep breath, the sea air filling her lungs, and started walking down the street, her heels clicking in time with the watch's rhythm. The town was alive with its usual rhythm, shopkeepers sweeping their stoops, children laughing as they darted past, and seagulls wheeling overhead. Karen barely noticed. Her mind was on the watch, on the way its gears had come to life under her touch, and on Elias's words, "It's not just about the watch. It's about you choosing to keep going." She'd spent years running from her grief, letting it fester into anger, blaming the world for a loss she couldn't control. But in that cramped, ticking shop, she'd faced it. Not just the watch's silence, but her own. The realization wasn't a lightning bolt. It was a slow dawn, creeping over her like the sun now dipping toward the horizon. She could choose to keep going. She could choose to wind the watch, to honor her father's memory, to live. As she walked, she passed a small park where an old man sat on a bench, feeding pigeons. His hands moved with the same deliberate care she'd seen in Elias, and she wondered if he, too, carried a story in his pocket, a watch, a ring, a memory. The thought made her smile, a small, private curve of her lips. She reached into her purse, her fingers brushing the watch's cool surface. She pulled it out, its gold case catching the fading light, and opened it. The hands moved steadily, each tick a tiny victory. She wound it gently, the key turning smoothly, and the act felt like a promise to herself. She wouldn't let it stop again. Her steps slowed as she reached the edge of the town, where the street gave way to a sandy path leading to the beach. The ocean stretched out before her, vast and restless, its waves whispering secrets to the shore. Karen slipped off her shoes, the sand cool beneath her feet, and walked toward the water. The watch ticked against her palm, a steady companion. She thought of her father, his stories, his laughter, the way he'd always told her to keep moving forward, even when life felt too heavy. She'd forgotten that lesson, buried it under her grief, but now it was resurfacing, clear and sharp. The watch wasn't just a relic. It was a reminder that time, however painful, was also a gift. It gave her space to heal, to remember, to live. She sat on a driftwood log, the waves lapping at the shore, and let herself cry. Not the angry tears of before, but quiet ones, born of release. The watch ticked on, unmoved by her tears, and she found comfort in its indifference. Time didn't judge. It simply moved, carrying her along if she let it. She thought of Mia, her gentle offer to teach, and Elias, his steady wisdom. They'd given her more than a fixed watch. They'd given her a moment to see herself clearly, to choose a different path. The town, the shop, the ticking clocks, they were all part of a world that kept turning, and she could be part of it too. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Karen stood, slipping the watch back into her purse. She felt lighter, not because her grief was gone, but because she'd found a way to carry it. She'd win the watch every day, not just to keep it running, but to remind herself that she could keep going too. The ocean stretched out before her, endless and alive, and she felt a spark of hope, a belief that tomorrow could be different, that she could be different. She turned back toward the town, her shadow trailing long behind her, and walked with purpose. The watch ticked in her purse, a quiet heartbeat, a promise kept.